This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
And Doc, as you know, one of our fine partners at the Detroit Sports Podcast Network is The Athletic. And The Athletic Detroit specifically is premium coverage for passionate Detroit sports fans. And listeners of this very episode of Tiger Talk with Chirco and Company can get 30% off the first year of an annual subscription to The Athletic by visiting theathletic.com/DSP. And welcome to the latest, the freshest edition of Tiger Talk with Chirco and Company. I am your host, Vito Geronimo Chirco, alongside my usual sidekick and broadcast partner and fun. And that is Doc from Doc and Jack, John Charles McElroon. John, how are you doing?
Finally, Vito, the Tigers broke the losing streak. Thank goodness, man, evening up that series versus Toronto. It could have been real bad. Ron Gardenhire had a team meeting and finally stopped what was a long losing streak, the longest losing streak since 2003. Now they're playing a series versus the Cubs at Wrigley Field. They're going to play the Cubs this year 4 times. They're going to play them twice this week and then twice later on this season. And it's always a good time to talk some baseball with the World Cup in the backdrop. What a crazy day, Vito. We were just talking before the show, and we were watching England. We thought it was just wrapped up, but whenever England plays in the World Cup or big games, something crazy happens. And right now, extra 30 minutes, baby. We get a chance to record a podcast, watch soccer in the background. What more could a guy ask for?
Well, one person is watching soccer and excited about World Cup soccer action. One guy is not. That is me, yours truly, Vito Jerome Chirco, on this week's edition of Tigers Talk. And the Tigers just coming off of a huge losing streak. 11 in a row, as you had noted already, Doc. Losing 11 straight from June 19th through 30th, dropping 3 series in a row. It was Detroit's longest losing streak since losing 11 in a row from August 13th through 23rd in 2003. And in case you forgot, the Tigers lost an American League record, 119 games in 03. So that was an epically bad season for the Tigers in Major League Baseball history as well.
What were your takeaways from the losing streak?
Well, it was a lot of being outscored. I mean, they were outscored, 68-29, and those 11 straight losses of theirs. So think about that, how much they looked bad, how much they weren't scoring even close to what the other team was scoring when they were playing their opposition. So it showcases to you the ineptitude that was on display fully by the Tigers throughout those 11 straight games, Doc.
And your colleague, Anthony Fennick, unfortunately broke some news that really has kind of hurt the Tigers in a big way, being that Shane Green now is hurt. And that is one of the really tough times, really bad timing for Shane Green to be hurt because of the fact that he could have been somebody that the Dodgers were looking at. It seems to me that I've been reading that the Dodgers have been peeking at some of the Tigers pitchers, Shane Green being one of them, as well as Michael Fulmer. And for Shane Green to be out, I think it's a really tough situation because of the fact that I think had the Dodgers made a reasonable offer, he could have been somebody that we let go of.
Well, now you can't trade him probably, right? To anybody. He's hurt. Was struggling before he got placed on the 10-day DL with a right shoulder strain. Also placed on the 10-day DL, outfielder Leonis Martin with a left hamstring strain. And they recalled Mikey Mauch, my boy from last season, was great down the stretch, pitiful in spring training, pitiful at the start of the season with the Tigers, in his first stint or cup of tea with the Detroit Tigers Major League Club. Back now at the big league club for this series against the Cubbies, and maybe beyond if he succeeds at the plate, but has to hit a heck of a lot better to sustain a Major League roster spot the rest of the way this season. And the hope is that he does maintain that roster spot, because they could use any kind of bats that produce any kind of offensive production. And Jim Adduci, maybe we'll see a few doozies from Adduci. He is back on the Major League ball club as well, Doc.
All right, Vito, I got to take you to task because you posed a question to the Detroit Sports Podcast Nation, and you were curious because of the fact that you obviously witnessed Nick Castellanos struggle a little bit in the midst of that losing streak, but he busted out the game prior to your post, and the post that you made was basically referencing the fact that you have doubts that on a winning ball club, Nick Castellanos can be the go-to guy. And I'm really curious and fascinated to get your take on that because I totally disagree. I think that what did we all ask for from Nick Castellanos? To be a productive baseball player. And I know early on, maybe he didn't live up to all the hype from being the guy that was viewed as a really highly talented, highly touted prospect in the Tigers organization. It took him a little bit of time, but it takes a lot of people time to kind of acclimate. And this year, he's been mashing the hell out of the baseball. And like others, it's like a roller coaster, up and down. But the game that, the couple games in which you started to question Nick Castellanos were games where he's hitting home runs, he's contributing, and during the Toronto series, he blasted a grand slam. And I'm like, where is this coming from, Vito? Bad timing. But give me your take on it. What is your opinion on Nick Castellanos, and why have you kind of maybe taken the stance that he could not be a contributing player strongly on a contending team?
And he could have had another home run, too, against Toronto in the series at Toronto.
What a
How about
catch.
Kevin Pillar, Superman move, leap the wall? Did you see the move he made to get that ball? I mean, crazy good was Kevin Pillar, and he is defensively out there in center field at Rogers Center and any ballpark that he plays at.
Amazing airtime, right? Wow.
Amazing airtime, verticality, the ability to get up there, and the vertical leaping ability. My God, he is hugely athletic. Castellanos isn't nearly as athletic. Now, at the plate, I just want to see him produce when the season is on the line, when you're competing, when you're playing relevant, meaningful baseball down the stretch of a season. We haven't seen that yet out of Mr. Nicholas Castellanos. That is my concern with Nick Castellanos, being able to carry a major league offense the entirety of the season, which, by the way, we're just in the first half of the season, so the All-Star game still hasn't happened. Once we hit the All-Star break, after the All-Star break, once that does occur, we'll see what he becomes after that break, because I still have my suspicions. I'm going to have my suspicions until he proves to me this season or in some season here that he can produce for the entirety of a major league campaign.
Okay, so you're taking more of a longer view. You're saying, look, yeah, in the midst of a season, the cat can hit. Nick can hit the baseball, and he's a guy that can contribute offensively, but there are times where he struggles and his bat disappears, which it has happened this season. But I would disagree, Vito. I feel like your stance that he could be maybe a contributing guy, as a lesser role, I do think that he has some trade value, and I do think that other teams are going to call about Nick Castellanos. Some people will say, well, maybe it's a 50-50 proposition whether the Tigers should decide to keep him or not. In the midst of a long-term rebuild, I don't see Nick Castellanos being part of it with the Detroit Tigers. I think that he could command something worthy enough of making the decision to trade him.
He's a very tradable asset right now, and he's not hugely expensive for a guy that has showcased some power, the ability to hit the long ball, with that being said, to hit for extra base power, and hit for average. He's doing it all at the plate right now, an extremely talented slugger, one of the best line drive hitters, if not the best. In the top 5, you could say in all of baseball, he is at hitting line drives, which teams want. They desire that, but also as a corner outfielder, maybe first baseman in the future, starting with next season when Victor Martinez's contract is off the books and Miguel Cabrera returns and slides into that DH role on a permanent basis. Castellanos becomes a first baseman full time. And then guess what? He has to hit for more power consistently even. He's hit for it here and there and has showcased the ability to do that. But consistently, can he do that over the whole entire season? That is my concern with Nick Castellanos. Great hitter, but I think he's lacking that ability to go and hit for power on a consistent every game basis.
Just based on the fact that he hasn't done it yet. That's why.
Hasn't done it yet over the course of a full season. Once he does that, if he proves it this year, I'll be on the bandwagon and saying, well, maybe he can be the guy that leads this Tigers offense. But once again, he's doing it when they're completely irrelevant. They're far from a playoff race. They're not in any kind of playoff race. They won't be in one the rest of the season. I want to see him do it as well, produce when games are meaningful, when the season's on the line, when the Tigers have a chance to get into the playoffs. This year, that is not at stake whatsoever for the Detroit Tigers.
What do you make of the team meeting that Ron Gardenhire had? Do you feel like it was perfect timing? Because some people will say, you know what, these team meetings are overrated. These coaches do it all the time. These managers in baseball will have these meetings and address some issues. Some will say maybe he should have done it earlier, maybe when the team had lost 6-7 games in a row. But the team responded, and that's a good sign. What do you make of Ron Gardenhire addressing the team prior to the losing streak ending?
Well, you know what, maybe it was a little bit too late. And you know what, 11 straight losses. So what do you say about him now getting this team, rectifying this team, getting this team to, get hot maybe a little bit, start winning a couple of games? A couple of wins don't mean anything to me in the grand scheme of things. What is that going to do for the Tigers? Does nothing. It accomplishes nothing. So maybe he should have had the chat with the Tigers earlier on, and maybe that would have helped out to avoid this losing streak from becoming what it became, this long-ass losing streak and one of the longest in Tigers history. So I would say still, I don't know really what it accomplished truly. I don't think it accomplished enough in so many words, Doc.
What do you make of managers and team meetings and closed-door meetings, and sometimes there's players-only meetings?
Uh-huh.
Do you feel like they're overhyped? Do you feel like these meetings that sometimes take place maybe have more significance to the media and fans than they really do to players? Because in the end, these guys are around each other all the time. They talk to each other. But sometimes you do have to meet and say, look, Let's not grip. Let's not panic. Let's not get to the point where we let the losing streak maybe get beyond 11 games, because there were games where they were out of it.
And there were games they could have won, they should have won, too, during that 11-game losing streak.
And Jimenez maybe struggled a little bit.
Yeah,
Shane Green.
The bullpen did all of a sudden was great until that 11-game losing streak. Then Shane Green as well struggling before he got placed on the 10-day DL.
In Detroit, I think that Jim Leland is an all-time legend with the talk that he had. It wasn't a team meeting. It was blasting the media. And a point that I made to you was, do you feel like maybe Gardenhire, when it turned south a little bit, when it went down like 5 games in a row, 6 games in a row, should he have done something like that? A little bit of a stunt where you come out, you just start screaming and yelling. Now, it did happen where once Chris Bosio was fired in the midst of that losing streak, he was ejected the next game like the 3rd inning. And you could tell that he was a little bit perturbed and angry. You could tell that he was upset that one of the guys that he brought along that was important to him for his staff was no longer part of the Tigers, and he blew a lid and he got himself ejected. But do you feel like he maybe could have done something in the media, maybe call out somebody? Because here's what I would have done. Look, I understand Victor Martinez is an individual that is highly respected and is an individual making $18 million, making a lot of money. But when he was consistently in the lineup batting 4th, and it took him just until his last couple of days to be slotted down into 6th in the batting order.
Red Osmus-esque.
Right. So I would have said, you know what? We need better hitting from all the veterans. Look, he's making $18 million, and you know he's going to be gone off the team. He's not going to be part of the team next year, so call him out. I feel like there was an opportunity missed by Ron Gardenhire to maybe make a stance in the media, make a scene, make some noise, do something. Look, nobody really expects you to win, but maybe if a meeting riles the boys up a little bit, why not a little bit of rah-rah theatrics?
To what degree, though, does it rile up the team? And I think it's a media narrative largely, too. These, closed room meetings with the club, the manager, and his club. I mean, I think it's a little bit overdone at times, and it's amplified. The significance of these meetings is amplified by the media. It's a narrative from the media.
Would have been great audio, right?
Would have been great audio to hear what he was having to say to the players behind closed doors. But I still think, once again, that it looks really good, these meetings, when the team starts winning after them. So what if you keep losing, though? Like the Tigers have, what they will be doing the rest of the season for the most part, losing a lot more than winning. So what does that really do? What does it really accomplish? Because really the media narrative is going to be great for you as a club, PR for your club, when you start winning all of a sudden after that closed-door meeting is done, or any kind of meeting that is done between the manager and his club. So once again, when your team's a lackluster club and then doesn't reverse course, right, and start winning then again, what does it really look like for your club having that closed-door meeting? It looks like you accomplished nothing. So I think when your team does start winning from a meeting, then the media, what I'm trying to say is that they pub it up, they make it more significant than it really is. Because also you can have these meetings and your team is still losing, or does even lose more than it was before that closed-door meeting.
And so in the midst of the 11-game losing streak, it was 2 losses to Cincinnati, then getting swept by Cleveland, getting swept in a 4-game series versus Oakland, and then losing the first 2 games on the road in a 4-game series versus Toronto. But it was good. They came back Sunday, Monday, and won the final 2 games of that, and they're making their way now. They had an early lead in the first game versus the Cubs, but as always, the team came back, and the Cubs right now are tied with the Detroit Tigers as we're recording this. But it is one of those things with turning a losing streak around. Have you ever been part of a slump buster, or ever heard of some of those legendary stories of like what some athletes will do to break a slump, like change different pairs of underwear, maybe hook up with some people that maybe they would normally hook up with to break slumps? Have you ever heard some of those
hooking up with people to break out of a slump? You mean man and a woman?
Google slump
really?
buster.
People have done that? I've heard of the underwear when you're winning, like superstitions kick in where you want to keep that underwear and keep wearing it, right? Until you lose again. So teams do that when they're winning a lot. I know that much.
Yeah, Google slump busting. You'll laugh.
There's a lot of stuff to it. A lot of different methods right to the madness when it comes to slump busting, I bet. For major leaguers and just amateurs like you and I that want to get out of a slump too, right? In any kind of capacity.
Let me phrase it in the nicest way possible. Let's just say some Cubs maybe have even come out and said that back in the day, maybe a la Mark Grace. And that's just on the down low. I'm not sure he's actually come out in a while.
Well, let's be journalistically accurate. We are journalists here at large.
I'm speculating that I do recall, in my memory, Mark Grace went on a nationally prominent show and said that, in terms of slump busting, that some guys potentially will bag or, have relations with a woman that they normally would not in terms of being oversized to basically slump bust.
Wow, I like how you said bag a woman.
Yeah.
So women that are bigger than what they really get into for their women typically.
Exactly.
Okay.
Engaging in relations with, oversized women, per se.
So these are men that sleep around probably, too, at the same time. And hopefully they don't have a wife and they're sleeping around, or a girlfriend that's sleeping around.
Could you imagine a young teenager hearing that on the radio?
That's what I mean.
And you're like, see, these toxic players. Could you imagine hearing that? It stuck with me.
Then you're advocating for these younger guys to go and just sleep with anybody that they want to, right? To bump out of, or, bust out of a slump. Really?
All
I don't know about that.
I gotta
Too
look
much
at
for
it.
me, slump busting.
I gotta look
For
it
that
up
matter.
because
Look it up to verify,
I'm going
please.
to because it stuck with me, and one of those stories that is legendary. So
Legendary, huh?
But in terms of the Tigers, Ron Gardenhire had a team meeting and they broke out of the slump, so it's a good thing.
They broke out of a slump, but once again, what does it lead to ultimately the remainder of the season? You know, you're not going to have the team go on a great run like in 06 after Jim Leland called out the team to the media. Remember, early on in the season, the Tigers weren't giving their best effort on a getaway day. Early on in the season in 06, he didn't like their effort. He called them out. It helped out the team. The team went on this great run, was 40 games above 500 at one point. The team will not be anywhere close to that.
Okay, and so the likes of Jim Rome has such a legendary following. I want to get to that point where there's a dedicated audience that takes all this audio and uploads it. There's this website that's dedicated to all Jim Rome audio, and I just typed in what I remembered. Here's the audio.
And it
I'm going to play
from Jim Rome.
This is
Let's play it.
It's called Mark Gray's Slumpbuster.
I love the naked pictures of the 250-pound babes. It's so cool. I put them all over the locker room, and I'd say, hey guys, here's some more fan mail, and they're so jealous. They're like, Gracie, no wonder you hit so good. You're hammering slump busters every single day. It's beautiful.
Oh man, Gracie, explain what a slump buster is.
A slump buster is if a team's in a slump, or if you personally are in a slump, you got to find the fattest, gnarliest, grossest chick, and you just got to lay the wood to her. And
Mark Gray actually said this on radio, live radio to Jim Rome.
It's also can be called jumping on a grenade for the boys.
Jumping on a grenade. For the boys, you labeled a woman that big as a grenade. I've heard that on Jersey Shore, by the way, too. They call those bigger women that they're not really into, typically, grenades. But
Vito, do you see the impact of radio? That stuck with me for 15 years.
I love it. I was about to say, that's stuck in the cranium all these years for you, Doc, and you're losing memory at 37.
Slump busting happens.
Wow.
He shared it on a national
radio. This is a former major leaguer that's done media since then. Really, he had the balls to say this on national radio, live radio with Jim Rome.
It's a legendary bit. It's a legendary call. And,
the clone saved it, huh?
Yes, they did. And props to stucknut.com. You can find it there.
Stucknut. And how about all these names, man? All these phrases we've heard today on Tiger Stock. Hilarious.
So do you have a newfound respect for Mark Grace?
No.
Would you ever think that audio would play on a podcast that you were hosting?
God, I would imagine nobody thought probably that would lead to what it has become. Like, think about when he did that interview. Do you think him and Jim Rome really thought 15 years down the line that it would be played by podcasters, a bald one and one that's 4 foot something? Think about it. Crazy stuff. How podcasts now can listen, can get all this stuff, get people to maybe gravitate towards us too, and we can reach so many people too with their audience. And now somebody else knows about slump busting and what it actually equates to, including myself.
That's the influence. Now you know the Mark Gray slump busting story, and I wonder if the Tigers took care of business that way.
You think somebody did, maybe?
Do you see the way he put that? And look.
Grenade. He called those women grenades, like falling on a grenade.
Wow, man.
Crazy stuff, man. Mark Grace. Now, he's a heck of a character. Always has been known as that. Now, I didn't think he ever went to the extent of that on live national radio, though. Okay. Crazy stuff.
See, I do bring more to the table than just fodder for boring facts and things like that, right, Vito?
At least you can, man. We make it entertaining, right?
Yep.
Hopefully enlightening and factual, fact-based here and there at least are enough to get you guys to gravitate and to listen to us on a consistent week-to-week basis here on Tigers Talk Doc.
Well, the slump is over. Thank goodness.
Sir.
Ron Gardenhire had a team meeting to summarize, and Nick Castellanos, to summarize our point there, I do believe he can be a contributing member of a solid team, and I do think that I hope that when the phone rings, Al Avila takes the telephone calls and is willing to listen to many offers. And right now, are you hearing the rumors that the Dodgers are interested in Michael Fulmer? Nick Castellanos is being looked at. Others as well, Lariano, as well as maybe some of the younger prospects as well. So it's interesting to see what's going to happen going forward with who is making the telephone calls and what's going on. Now, after the break, we got to address a scandal that took place. I want to get your take on it. It happened last week. I've already given my thoughts on different podcasts and different platforms, but I'm curious to get your sense of it. It's probably going to be safe to assume that you're going to take the stance similar to the general manager of the Tigers, but we got to wait and see what your thoughts are regarding the Chris Bosio firing after this quick timeout.
Looking forward to it after this break on Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. And Doc, as you know, one of our fine partners at the Detroit Sports Podcast Network is the Detroit Sports Commission. And we love everybody there. Chris Smith, the director of the Detroit Sports Commission. Marty Dobek, the PR extraordinaire for the Detroit Sports Commission. I love doing work whenever I get the chance to help out those guys at the DSC. They have a great event, Zenith Prep Kickoff Classic event, the premier season opening high school football event in the Midwest, taking place this August as well. You need to check it out. And for all the info regarding that game, please go to their great, terrific website at DetroitSports.org. And also, you can find out about all the marquee events that the Detroit Sports Commission is bringing to the Metro Detroit area and to our very region. With that being said, by following the DSC on Twitter and on Instagram at DET Sports. And Doc, back here on Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company, and we have an interesting conversation to bring up here. And it has sparked a lot of even national debate. You've seen people left and right give their reaction to it regarding Chris Bosio, the former Tigers pitching coach, and what was said, supposedly a racial slur directed at an employee of the Detroit Tigers organization. And who was it, directed at? Chris Bosio has told Bob Nightingale that it wasn't actually directed at anybody of the African-American descent, and it wasn't actually a racial slur, to sum it all up. So that's what we've gotten from him. That's his side of the story. What really happened, we may never truly find out, though.
One of those interesting stories in that came out of the blue and is really shocking in nature for Chris Bosio, a pitching coach. And his story was he called Daniel Stump, a reliever for the Tigers, spider monkey, and unfortunately, he thought that someone overheard it and got upset, and it was a misunderstanding. But the problem is the investigations later on have shown that journalists went up and asked different attendees, and they have not corroborated that story. So I definitely give Bosio respect for coming out and trying to defend himself, but don't lie to us. If journalists have come out and asked different attendees, then if you make that statement, that journalists are going to ask different attendees. They're going to ask the attendee. They're going to ask Daniel Stump what happened. And right now, the story kind of favors the Detroit Tigers because they investigated. Al Avila sought legal counsel, and he made the move. So I don't think anything that Chris Bosio has said has made me believe his side of it. And right now, he might have to just sue the team in order to get the real facts of the case regarding what was said, who was intended towards, and the real facts of the case. And I'm not sure that's really going to happen because I do believe that in terms of the investigation, you have to trust a little bit the level of investigation the Tigers did because they know they're a multi-million-dollar company. If you make a mistake on a hire, you're getting your ass sued.
Yeah, they're not going to just fire somebody for the heck of it. It better be a fireable offense. And this is a very offensive, obscene gesture made by anybody when they're bringing up a racial slur, referring to somebody as a monkey. And Daniel Stumpy said he just called him a spider monkey. Well, it wasn't that if he was fired. They're not going to fire him over him saying that to Daniel Stump, who I believe has denied those allegations as of now. So I believe he has already told everybody out there, Daniel Stump, that never happened. That was never uttered by Chris Bosio in direction of him. So this was something else, much more severe, I'm guessing. And guess what? When you utter a racist phrase, well, guess what? It means that you were thinking about it and that you are racist. So there's no excuse for it because I've never uttered such a phrase to anybody of African-American descent. That's not going to just slip off the tongue for me when recording a podcast or if I was on TV or with my buddies and talking with them at a local saloon, as Doc would like to call it, I bet, and having a cocktail or two, as Doc would like to call it too. So for me, I've never uttered such a phrase, anything that is or could be considered a racial slur. So if he did say something, which I got to believe he did if he was fired, and he was fired, so I got to take the Tigers. I got to be on the Tigers side. I am defending them for making this move to ultimately fire Chris Bosio, Doc. And I think it was obviously the right move with that being said. And him now to maybe get legal counsel or to try to file a lawsuit against the Tigers, well, guess what? He's not going to win that because it happened. And him, speaking of Bob Nightingale, once again of USA Today Sports, and saying that he just called Daniel Stump a spider monkey. He said, someone in our coach's room asked me Monday afternoon, whenever this was now, about Stump, Bosio said. And I said, Bosio saying this too, and I said, oh, you mean Spider Monkey. That's his nickname. He's a skinny little white kid who makes all of these funny faces when he works out. The kid thought we were talking about him. He is saying that somebody, a club attendant, Doc, because you were trying to get it, I believe, overheard this conversation and thought that Chris Bosio was directing the Spider Monkey phrase at him. Guess what? Now, I guess he could be fired if the guy thought it was offensive and was directed at him, but you would think, and what I've heard, what you said too, Doc, makes me believe the Tigers did all their due diligence in investigating this situation. And I believe got down to the nitty-gritty and found out that Chris Bosio said something much worse, and it probably wasn't directed at Daniel Stump, the Tigers relief pitcher, lefty reliever. So with all of those facts gathered, data gathered, just investigating gathered, I would have to say, once again, the Tigers, they made the right move. I have to defend them totally on this matter, Doc. How about you?
Yeah, because of the fact that The Athletic went and talked to several attendees. Nobody's corroborating the story.
Right.
And Chris Bosio really put himself in a tough spot. He is trying to defend his honor, but here's the problem, too, is that he has a history of making offensive comments or potentially comments that could be construed the wrong way regarding PEDs and making allegations that somebody used PEDs. And when you make these allegations and they're not true, people are going to take offense to it, and you're going to get yourself a bad reputation. So the Detroit Tigers acted swiftly, and they took steps to go forward. Do you think it's going to have a massive impact on the pitching staff because of the fact that Bosio early on was the talk of the Detroit Tigers in terms of how he's been handling the starters, some of the techniques that he utilizes in order to get these pitchers to develop? You think it's going to be a massive issue on the baseball diamond?
Well, you know what? If it is, it doesn't matter. You know why? Because when you utter such a racial slur, as we all believe he did now, and like you said, nobody's corroborating this story, no club attendees are, so you know what? He said what he did, he made his bed, he has to sleep in it, and he deserved to be fired. It's a no-tolerance policy. I'm glad the Tigers followed that policy of it being no tolerance. So him just saying it one time, guess what, is far too many times, and he got ousted. And I love that he did. The Tigers acted in the completely correct fashion, in my opinion. And you were asking me then to answer your question now, would it affect the Tigers' rotation or pitching staff as a whole the rest of the way? Maybe it will, because I think he had a great impact on the Tigers' pitching staff. And on Mike Fiers throwing 8 innings on Monday, was it? Mike Fiers, a veteran like that, doing so well. Jordan Zimmermann over his last 5 outings. Have you seen what he's done? He hasn't allowed more than 5 hits or 3 earned runs in any of his last 5 outings, Doc. So he did an extremely solid job with the Tigers pitching staff as a whole. But now, once again, you can't care about that and what kind of impact he could have made the rest of the way or what kind of loss he will be on the Tigers pitching staff because he did something erroneously and deserved to be fired. So I don't care about what happens. And guess what? The Tigers aren't trying to win anyways. So it's really not going to be a big dent, I think, in the Tigers pitching staff.
Is Jordan Zimmermann back?
I think to a certain degree, is he an ace-caliber arm that's worth all that money that he's being paid over the long term? I'm going to say no and hell no on that one because he's proven to me and to all of us as Tigers, outsiders, fans, pundits alike that, guess what? He's not going to live up to the bill. He's too old now. He's not good enough. He's been hurt. And he's bound to get hurt again. So even though he's been successful of late, once again over the last 5 outings for himself, I'm not going to say he's back to being an ace caliber arm, which he was with the Nationals. He is not that caliber of an arm, in my opinion, anymore. And I think he's proven that. It's not like just my opinion. Everybody thinks that and realizes that about Jay Zim at this juncture in his major league career.
At least he helped contribute to the slump being over. So good for Jordan Zimmermann.
Yeah.
And you got to remember, too, that he's been battling injuries for the better part of the last couple seasons. He can be a guy that can become a veteran that maybe learns the art of pitching and can maybe not rely on his fastball as much. And, hey, if you pitch to contact, then at least you can have an opportunity to contribute. And that's all we can ask for, right?
And ever since he joined the Tigers, he has dealt with nagging injuries. It's like there's never been more than a month he's gone without really a nagging injury, or a couple of months without a nagging injury flaring up. And to specify now, bringing up Vito's notebook here early on in this week's, edition of Tigers Talk, here's the stat about Jordan Zimmermann. Over his last 5 outings, he has failed to permit more than 5 hits and 3 earned runs in each of his last 5 outings. I already had said that, but he threw 7 innings too and allowed 5 hits and 1 earned run versus the Jays over the weekend. So very impressive out of Jay Zim of late, but has he turned back the clock completely? A little bit, but not completely, in my opinion, to, I think, warrant saying that Jay Zim is now an ace caliber arm once again.
What did it mean to you having Jim Adducci called back up to the main club?
Adducci. From Adducci, we get to say that line once again, which is great. And I love saying that all of last year on Tiger Stock when he was up with a big league club. And he made an instant impact. Remember, on the Tigers last year, hit the baseball more than some of the other guys were. And I think he's better already than Jacoby Jones at hitting the baseball consistently, making contact, I'm saying. So Adducci brings some speed on the base paths. And I heard Dan Dickerson, who was a guest on Tigers Talk, a little plug for us there. Check out that interview. We had him on a couple of weeks ago, about a month or two ago now. He had mentioned that last year Adducci was like the fastest guy in the base paths for the Tigers. At 32 years young, I believe he is. So you could say 32 years young when the guy's still fast in the base paths. So he brings that kind of impact to the Tigers, and they need that kind of guy, and he can hit a little bit. And he's probably a better fielder already, too, than Nick Castellanos. And I shouldn't say better fielder already, but Nick Castellanos probably is worse, at least, than Jim Adducci. So Adducci brings that in the corner outfield, can play a little bit of center field, and he hits better consistently for contact than Jacoby Jones. So I think he's an upgrade for this club. Even though he wasn't on the club the full way, up to this point, I still think you can say that about Jim Adducci, and he's a veteran. He's still a veteran to some degree after playing with the Tigers last year.
And to quickly check through the minors, Daz Cameron and Ronnie Rodriguez are sizzling in the minors. They're doing some good things. Two young prospects that hopefully can contribute to the Tigers in the near future. So it's interesting stuff going on right now with the Detroit Tigers. I'm still invested. I know you are too. We're still peeking in. Tell me a little bit about the big numbers that you looked up this week and contributed to the Detroit Free Press.
Well, yeah, more of Vito's Notebook right now being presented to you by the Detroit Sports Commission, another fine sponsor of the DSP Network, and Nicholas Castellanos. We brought him up earlier in the podcast, the first half of this week's podcast, and so we already kind of know it, but it's truly, worth it to bring up, I think, once again here for the 100th time that he's experiencing the best season of his 6-year Major League career. Here's a stat about Nick Castellanos, by the way, from Vito's Notebook this week, and the article that I do for the Detroit Free Press on a weekly basis comes out like at midnight of Monday mornings, and it's called 5 Numbers You Need to Know About Regarding the Tigers via the Free Press and Free Press Sports Online. This stat about Nick Castellanos regards that this season marks the first time that Casty has reached 100 hits in under 85 games, Doc. It took him 81 games to collect hits number 100 and 101 this season. So how about that? Under 85 games, 81 games in total for Nick Castellanos this season to collect hits number 100 and 101 for himself, doing that over the weekend against the Toronto Blue Jays. Then there's the stat about Dixon Machado. He continues to struggle. And another one about Buck Farmer, what he's done of late. He's looked really sharp. So moving on from that now to a little game of Vito's Trivia. We haven't done that in a long time here. And the aim is to stump you, which I try to do every single time I bring up Vito's Trivia. And I've got 2 ones for you really quick here. And here we go.
Here we go.
Here we go. Ready?
Okay.
Who was Detroit's leading WAR player? So leading player in terms of wins above replacement back in 2003. Once again, when they lost an American League record, 119 games.
Man. Oh, who was the most...
Now, I can give you a hint. I'm going to let you think about it for like 10 to 15 seconds here. Then I'll give you a hint that might help you out.
Okay. Who was the most productive player on that team? I couldn't tell you, Vito, because that was an awful team.
Awful franchise. And it was a guy that recently followed Detroit Podcast at Detroit Podcast on Twitter, a former Tiger from that 03 squad. Do you know who I'm speaking of?
Someone followed us? Sweet.
Yeah, you didn't notice this?
No.
Probably. I was about to say, I noticed it.
I might have known.
He was on a wrestling podcast of a friend of ours, of a friend of the DSP Network. Who was that guest?
Yes, now I do know. Was it Delman Young?
Close. Dimitri Young. Demeet Hook.
Yeah.
Demeet Hook, who just
Yeah.
followed, was on that wrestling pod of Dennis Farrell, a friend of the podcast. And then also a guy that just followed, he actually did, followed the DSP Network on Twitter. You better look that up at Detroit Podcast on Twitter. And he's like
Delman's
Demeet
his
Hook.
brother, right? He was
Delman played on the Tigers too,
Yes,
but
yes.
after Dimitri. Dimitri's
Close.
the older brother. So
You
close,
got it.
but no cigar. Now the next one. How many saves, Doc, did the Tigers' leading saves getter in 03 record? Well, it's not many. I'll just give you that much as a heads up.
Okay. Well, yeah, they lost 119 games.
So you know it wasn't many.
Let's say 19.
5. The guy had 5 saves. That was all. Franklin German, who came over in the Jeff Weaver trade with the Oakland A's. And then a guy that I actually had to look up to see what he actually did in the major leagues, Chris Mears. Never heard of the guy. I mean, and I'm a big Tigers fan. Was young back then, but still never heard of Chris Mears. Him and German combined or tied for 5 saves in 03. They were the leading saves getters for the Tigres in 03. That's how bad the Tigers were. They were completely despicable. And Dimitri Young, really quick, back to him being the leading WAR player on that 03 Tigers team. What he recorded for his WAR was only 3.4. 3.4 wins above replacement, according to BaseballReference.com. And he was the leading WAR player on the Tigers that season.
Wow. Yeah, that was a rough season, Vito.
Doesn't it tell you it was rough when that's the case for Dimitri Young being the leading WAR player with 3.4 wins above replacement and the leading saves getter had 5? German and Mears tying for 5 saves in that season. How sad were the Tigers, man?
Vito, you remember from back in 03, they were just one game away from some significant records. And to share, I think I shared with you.
You have something funny here to reveal, right?
Yeah, I made phone calls to national radio, and I made a phone call regarding the 2003 team because Jim Rome had made a promise that if the Tigers broke the record, he would come back and do his second tour stop in Detroit. And so many people were wanting the Detroit Tigers to lose and get blown out the last couple series. And I made a phone call and said, well, I don't really want them to lose, but if Rome's going to come back to town, then sure, no problem. But it ended up they did win more than they should have, but they ended up with 119 losses in 2003. It was a bad team.
43 and 119, Doc.
43 wins.
Epically bad.
Yeah, it was epically
God,
bad.
I mean, you could put together a team like tomorrow that can put up 60 to 70 wins, you would think. 60 to 65.
Well, Vito, what else is upcoming this week? They're playing the Cubs for 2. What else is going to take place?
Well, what do you think happens with the Tigres playing the Cubs, by the way, on the road at historic Wrigley Field?
Split.
First and foremost.
I think they split.
A split is fair to say, right? Now, the Cubs were doing really great. We're like 12 games above 500. I don't know where they stand at currently, but they've done really well, but in a competitive NL Central. You go from the NL Central division, highly competitive, to the AL Central, where by default the Indians are going to win the division because there's no competition whatsoever after the Tribe in the AL Central. So you've got the Cubs for 2, you're right. And then at home, Tigers come back to Comerica for 4 against the Tejas Rangers for a highly non-intriguing series.
Yeah.
Who's going to watch that series? And then if it's extremely hot, I don't care that it's, after the 4th of July, people are off from maybe work and from school, obviously. I don't know who's going to really sit there behind in the ballpark there over that weekend. If it's really, really hot, 90 degrees plus maybe over the weekend, to see the Texas Rangers play, Doc, you're not going to get a big-time attendance at all for that weekend. Coming up here at Comerica once again against the Texas Rangers.
And stay tuned in a couple weeks. I know they have a strong series versus the Boston Red Sox at Comerica Park, I think, in later July. So we'll definitely look at that series in coming episodes of Tigers Talk. Good podcast, sir. I hope you and the family have a great 4th as this will be dropping. Have your beers. Listen to Vito and Doc break down the Detroit Tigers, the news of the week, and also having a little bit of fun with Slump Busters. You learn something new every show, right?
Slump busting is key to some guys in their professions, maybe. Not just Major League ball players, but not in my profession, at least not of yet here, as a DSP Network podcaster, Doc.
All right, Vito, let's get out of here.
Adios, everybody.